Hey everyone, welcome back. Icon here. Thank you so much for checking out another episode of Esports Analysis. And finally, it has been 13 days since Formal and Scump and Envoy and the rest of the guys over at Chicago have streamed any of their scrims, but that is what we are watching today. So this is actually the second map. This is their first scrim back. They're playing Minnesota. So ROKKR, Assaults, all those different guys. So I figured this would be a good time to go ahead and hop in, and we are watching them on the map Gunrunner. So it seems like this has been pretty popular on my channel as of late. Even the polls that I've posted on Twitter, a lot of people wanted to see this map in specific. So, of course, it's a fan favorite. I just feel like this is one of those maps that when you look back, this map and Hackney Yard, those two really are going to be like one of those best of all times, like one of those GOAT Call of Duty maps. Like, think back to Standoff in Black Ops 2 and Raid in Black Ops 2, maps like that. So I feel like when I watch a map like this, that's exactly how I feel. So with that, as we go ahead and hop into the actual analysis, we're about to rotate here from P1 back over to P2, and it looks like as that rotation is occurring, Chicago is trying to push out this right side while Minnesota is spawning in the backside and on the left side. So mini-map in the top right-hand corner of your screen, I am going to go ahead and draw on that. So as we rotate from P1 to P2, Chicago is pushing over this right flank, and essentially what they're trying to do is if you can get behind this right flank, then what that does is that forces Minnesota to spawn further out over here. And if you're spawning in the back, that's how you end up overtaking it. So I will say at this point in time, Minnesota had spawns as it rotated back to this hill. So they're doing a fairly nice job of holding this down. There's normally waves of pushes here. So it looks like the first few waves, Minnesota has absolutely, you can see that ROKKR just got a two-piece there. So they've absolutely locked down that first set of rotations there, and as it rotates over to P3, they're going to end up having a lead. It does look like Arcees was the first to rotate, and he went down in P3, and Silly just got a double there. So those are massive kills. So if you're really trying to lock down spawns in P3, those are really big kills, because essentially what you're doing is you're stopping them from rotating earlier and then pushing a little bit further out into coal over there, in towards minecart. So I do want to show this real quick. So again, mini map in the top right hand corner. I'm going to stop the video for just a moment just so I can explain this. So essentially what you guys just watched as there was a rotation over to P2 for Chicago is that a lot of times you'll see people go through mid map and they'll try to get here, and that's where those are where the gun battles happen, right? What you just saw is a little bit more of like a long play. So essentially what they did is they were spawning over here trying to get into P2. Rather than go ahead and cut through over to P3, they went the long way. So they went back over towards Warehouse, and as they were rotating back towards Warehouse, you'll saw when Formal died there, he ended up spawning in this Warehouse area. So now as they approach P3 and they approach P4 and they approach P5, they're going to have those beneficial spawns that you want to have. I know there was a lot of drawing on the minimap right there, but I just wanted to go ahead and make sure that point was clear, because that's really that's like the perfect play, right? To go ahead, flank all the way around, get those warehouse spawns, and then as it rotates to P3, you have spawns. As it rotates to P4, you're on the beneficial side of the map. Now, are you going to be able to max out time for P4? That's usually a little bit more contested, but absolutely for P5. So on this map in general, again, I'm drawing in the top right-hand corner, P2 and P5, these are the two hills where you can really max out the most amount of time, with P5 being the absolute number one. So those two hills are ones where if you can get the majority of the time in those two, that's how you end up winning this game. So what my guess would be is that by the end of, so it's rotating from P3 over to P4, by the time P5 is done, my guess would be that Chicago's probably going to have at least a little bit of a lead. It looks like they have like a 20-point lead right now. And since they're in P4, or they were at the moment, I would say that's probably going to be even a little bit higher than that. So there's one thing that you can do here. Let's just talk about P4 and P5. So if you know, so for example, Chicago is spawning over here, right? They're spawning back warehouse. If you know, so if you're Minnesota and you know that Chicago is spawning back in P5, then what you have to do is a lot of teams are trying really hard to go ahead and flip this spawn to get into P5. But I think what might end up being the smarter play is that since this spawn is so hard to push through, if I'm So if I'm the enemy team that doesn't have spawns, what I'm trying to do is I'm really trying to capture P4. I'm sending all of my resources there. I'm pushing up into mid-map and over towards woods. And if I'm pushed up on their side of the map, then I can lock down the majority of the points for P4. And essentially what that does is, since P5 is so hard to break, if you get the majority of the points in P4 and your enemy team gets the majority of the points in P5, then it basically just counteracts each other, right? It just cancels each other out. So the problem is that when you're trying to send a few resources to get spawns for P5 and you're trying to spend a few resources over at P4, if you don't end up getting P4, then now you're basically going to be down by 100. And I think that's what you're going to see here. So Arcides and Formal with a couple kills there inside the hill. And you can see as the next 10 seconds clicks off here, it's going to be like a 145 to 60 game. So we're talking about an 85-point lead when right before the rotations to P4 and P5, it was a 20-point lead. So they completely lost so if you're Minnesota, you completely gave up a 60-point gap right there just by not being able to either capture points on P4 or flip the spawns for P5. So little bit of an issue there. And I will say real quick, I'm a little bit surprised that this is happening at the moment, just because this is the first time in 13 days that Chicago has scrimmed online. Now, of course, they've played at the event, and of course they scrimmed on land and in person. But in terms of everybody being at their house and scrimming online, this is the very first time that has happened. So I'm a little bit surprised that there's a 100-point lead right now, just because it's been so long and Minnesota's been at home, right? For the last couple of weeks, Minnesota's just been at home grinding in the comforts of their office, wherever their home stations are. So I'm a little bit surprised to see such a lead. But with that, if you're new to my channel and you just came aboard as I was doing match analysis videos, normally when I do scrim analysis, these are the points in time where the nice thing about scrims is that we can hear exactly what they're saying. So this is the point in time, since we've already talked about the strategy the first time through, that I do like to go ahead and hop on board so I can hear exactly what they're talking about, what their strategy is, and what they're trying to do. So with that, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn up this volume and let's give it a listen in.
He's already side door quick.
I got muted.
I'm looking at your window.
Got me side.
I'm flooding this.
Wait, 80 seconds. Let's take time still. I'm gonna play new here.
Got him.
Somebody hit me. Help me back. Me for you.
I got time.
I don't know exactly what the issue is for Minnesota, but this is one that if you have spawns as it rotates back to P2, if you're Minnesota, you cannot afford to give this up. This is a really bad loss. When it was at P1, Minnesota had spawns for P2. And since Chicago was able to get the majority of that time there at the end, that's a really bad loss.
Yeah, go front now. Go front. They're playing the back really heavily for no reason.
I got one. I got two. I got two more hill.
On the head in hill.
One thing I'll say real quick is that for Formal, this is a really nice long play here. So minimap top right hand corner, they finished with control of P2. So I'm going to go ahead and change this color. But they finished with control of P2. Now a lot of the SMG resources went mid-map trying to get into P3, but you saw that Formal really pushed over to Woods. And then when he was here, he got a couple kills in these lanes. And then he tried to push out a little bit more, and he did end up dying. But essentially, that's the long play here, is that they're trying really hard to flank through P4 over to Woods to get behind P5, because if you have the spawns for P5, now again, you have P3, P4, and P5. You have the next 3 spawns locked down. But at this point in time, I don't think it's going to matter. If I'm watching the mini-map, look at the mini-map in the top left-hand corner of your screen. So Formal's right here getting time, and he has 1 teammate up here, 2 teammates in Woods. He had 1 teammate mid-map. That's how you max out the time in P4. If you have control of time and the rest of your team is pushed out into those cuts, that's how you really take advantage of P4, and that's exactly what they're doing right here. So as this comes to a close, that's a 250 to 101 victory for Chicago in their first scrim back since the London land. And I'll be honest, I'm I'm a little bit shocked just because of the fact that they haven't really been able to play on land very much, and Minnesota's kind of been home for the last couple of weeks at their home setups being able to play. So I don't know if host had something to do with it or what, but ROKKR with 19, Silly with 19, ASIN with 18, they really did just, they kind of just got outslayed a little bit. So with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring this one to a close. So if you're new around here, thanks so much for tuning in to an episode. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I really do enjoy breaking down these scrims. So if there's anything you want to see, make sure you put it down in the comments below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, also put those down below. I love those interactions and responding to you guys and your questions that you might have. So last thing, make sure you leave a like. It really helps me out and gets me into that YouTube algorithm. So thank you guys so much, and I will check you in the next episode of Esports Analysis.